Here we go. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Plaistow Board of Selectmen meeting for June 1st, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. And Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Select Chair, Ms. Hart.
Here.
Select Vice Chair, Mr. Talley.
Here.
Selectman Mr. Plaistow.
Here.
Selectman Mr. Glenn.
Here.
Selectman Mr. Burrows.
Here.
And note for the record, Town Manager Mr. Pearson is joining us remotely.
All right, thank you. Could you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first on the agenda is to approve meeting minutes for May 18th of 2020. So may I get a motion on the floor for that, please?
Make a motion that we approve the minutes of May 18th, 2020 for the Board of Selectmen.
All right, and is there a second on that motion? Going once, going twice.
Second?
Second, okay. And now can we have, is there any discussion or changes or anything?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Update public policy comment section. It was a long discussion,
Which page is that on?
page 6. I made a lot of comments, and according to the minutes, I wasn't even there, because there's nothing on me about saying anything.
So what would you like to add to that? Do you have?
I sent
do you have it?
some information to Beth. Did you receive that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
And
so,
it was just a quick, like 2 or 3 sentences all, because I wasn't going to summarize the whole meeting.
right.
But I was
okay.
surprised that, I was the one that wanted to get it on the public agenda.
Exactly,
And then I wasn't even part of the discussion if you look at the minutes.
So I'll withdraw my second until we can
Well-
get it fixed, and we'll
Can we-
re-review them
can we
at
table it?
another meeting.
Yes, okay, can you withdraw your first?
Yes.
Okay, so can we table this until we get the notes rewritten? All right,
Okay.
okay, thanks, Julian. Okay, so the next on the agenda is public comment, but I'm going to table that for a minute so that we can start our public hearing to consider the ARM grant for the Pollard Road culvert. And so I'd like to open up the public hearing at 6:35 p.m. And I would welcome any members of the public, if they wish to ask questions or discuss anything, they can call 560-8337, and we'll put you on speaker, and you can ask your questions. So I'll wait for a few minutes to see if anybody wants to call, and then in the meantime, Mark can speak about that. But go ahead, Julian.
I just want to ask one question. Can Mark hear me, or do I have to speak up?
Well, I heard parts of it, what you said. I think the gist of what you said was, is that the minutes did not reflect some comments that you made.
No, I was just asking because we had trouble with the mics last week.
So your voice is intermittent at best for me.
Take your mask off.
Oh, yeah, take your mask off.
Can you hear me better now?
Can you hear me now?
It's still your voice. I hear every other word.
Can you move the
Okay.
mic closer?
So I'll just have to speak louder and face that mic in the table in the middle.
All right.
Is it better now?
No, if you're asking me a question, I can't hear the question.
I guess it's not.
Okay. So while we are waiting for any member of the public to speak at this public hearing, Mark, could you kind of give us a little bit of breakdown on the history of this, please, if you wouldn't mind, of the ARM grant? Hello?
Oh, were you talking to me?
Yes, sir. Could you
Okay,
just
well then,
brief-
this isn't working because I can't hear anybody. I don't know if Dean's available or if you have to take that disc and use the disc, but I met with Dean this week and I thought we had this resolved, but evidently we don't.
No, can you hear us now?
It depends on who talks.
Maybe we need a group
I'm
mic.
right on the disc, so if you could just give us
I can hear you clearly.
a brief overview of the ARM grant, the history of
Yes.
it, so that the public will know what we're voting on. Thank you.
Okay. So the brief history is that when we looked at the Pollard Road culvert replacement, we were looking to see if there was any grants available to help us with the financing of the replacement of the grant. So I located an aquatic resource mitigation fund grant from the Department of Environmental Services. And we applied for it. There were several rounds. There were several selection committees, and ultimately we were selected. And since we were selected and awarded the original amount, the amount has been increased to $135,000. And that amount is a grant and does not have to be paid back. The other remaining funds to complete the project are already funded through the town meeting warrant article in 2020 and some prior expenditures that we spent on the design, permitting, and engineering. So by accepting this grant tonight, this completes the financing for the replacement of the Pollard Road culvert, and all the other funds to help with this project have already been appropriated through town meeting.
Okay, great. Board, do you have any questions for Mark? No? No? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
All right, go ahead, Julian.
I'll say it loud.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the Aquatic Resources Mitigation Fund grant awarded by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services in the amount of $135,000 for the replacement of the Pollard Road culvert.
And authorize the town manager to sign off on all related paperwork here too.
And authorize the town manager to sign off on all related paperwork here too.
All right, so I do have a phone call coming in, so hold on. Hello?
Hi, it's Laura.
The live stream isn't working? All right, she said, all right. So, okay, Laura, I'm sorry we got disconnected, but I will tell you that it is on television. It may not be on live stream until a little bit later on, like the problem that we had the last time. So I hope you can hear me. If you can't, please call me back, okay? And I'm sorry, we got disconnected. Okay, so sorry about that. All right, so may I have a second on that?
I second the motion.
Hi.
Okay.
Well, Laura? Can you hear me? Yeah, hi, honey, it's Francine. It is streaming on the TV on channel 17 and 23. The live stream may not be quite up and running yet. So Dean is looking into that right now, but you can get it on channel 17. I'm sorry for this confusion.
Dean just told me the live stream isn't available tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dean just said that the live stream is not available. All right, I'm sorry. Sorry. Can you watch it on TV? Okay. All right. We'll figure something out for you guys then. Do you have a computer? All right. So hopefully it'll be put up on our town website tomorrow, so you'll see it then. Sorry about that. Thanks for letting us know. Bye. Okay, I'm sorry. So John Blinn seconded that motion?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that? No? So, okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries 5-0-0. Okay, so next on our agenda, Mr. Jim Peck is going to give us a presentation, and it says here Town Hall flower beds, but it's really the Safe Routes to School flower beds. So, Jim, thank you for coming, and take it away and talk loud.
Okay. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. I'm here as a citizen. I'm not here from the library, I'm not here from the Historical Society, I'm not here from the Planning Board. I'm here strictly as a citizen, and a citizen who has pride in our hometown, especially the village center. We have a beautiful park out here. We're putting new sidewalks in, which is great, and the park is maintained very well by the town highway department. We're very glad, I'm personally very glad to see the islands on 125 are cleaned up. I mean, that went on for a number of years, and kudos to Mark for getting that done. That's nice. All these little things have an impression on people in town. And it's nice to talk about the heavy hitter type stuff, but when push comes to shove, a lot of people in town just have pride in the town. You know, we have Plaistow Pride Day. A lot of people go out. I know I go out and pick up stuff off, trash and everything. So I'm hearing about this soft stuff, not the real difficult stuff. And we're having a lot of difficult stuff this year. So this is more, consider it a soft thing. So what I talked to Francine about, and she agreed, we're trying to find a way to get the businesses in town to, you know, step up and, you know, show their pride in the town. So I said, I think I can go and I think I can find some businesses that would help, you know, take care of those safe routes to Sewell Islands, which, you know, unfortunately, there wasn't a provision to take care of them. I know Mark was looking at addressing it, but I've got 3 businesses, actually 4 if you count the landscaper, and they are willing to step up to donate their funding to a landscaper, and I've got, unfortunately, I haven't picked the landscaper, but I have 3 bidding on it. And I think we can do it for some reasonable amount. I'd rather not say the amount because the bidding is still going on.
Right.
It would be crazy for me to throw it out there at this point. It's not ridiculous money. It's, you know, something to go in the spring, put the mulch in, clean up all the dead stuff, take the trash out, you know, cut the dead ends. There's some good shrubbery in there. I mean, they did a pretty good job of shrubbery and trees and stuff like that. So it could look pretty good. And you can see that in front of the church, and I just noticed in front of the school today, it's been done like magic. Maybe if we wait a couple months at all, this will be a moot point. I think they did in front of the school today because they had their graduation. I'm going to guess that. I don't know who did it, but.
Well, it was this weekend, it was already all cleaned
Yeah,
up.
they were over there today driving around the 5th grade graduation, so. But anyway, that's what we want to do. We want to offer funding from 3 businesses, and I can tell you who the businesses are. It's Fran Berube from Brookside Funeral Home and Chapel, Dave Hansberry from Joseph Hills. They're both on Main Street, not quite in that area, but very close. And then Tessa Parziale who's on Elm Street. They've stepped up and offered to fund 3/4 of it. And what I'm doing is talking to the landscapers and posing to them what we would do is they would contribute 1/4, get paid the 3/4, and each of them would get a small sign, nothing huge, but something to say, you know, you've seen those signs before. People donated or sponsored a particular area. And the signs wouldn't cost much. Francine said the town should be able to find some bucks to do that. So that's the spiel. It's a 1-year commitment. The 3 businesses want you guys to know that it's like we're going to try this. And, you know, this is a good year to do it because the town has a lot of other things going on. You know, put this aside. You don't even have to think about it. We'll take care of it. Now, as far as these landscapers, these guys work by the side of the road all the time. They know how the safety, they have protocols and what they do. So I'm not worried about that at all. They wouldn't work from the road. They'd work from, you know, inside. As a matter of fact, this year, like I said, 2 of the areas are already done. So the primary area would be the corner of Elm Street. And there is some grassy area there. I just went out there with one of the landscapers and walked around there. There's a grassy area just north of the driveway, Mr. Unger's driveway, on Elm Street as you make the corner. That's all grass. And that doesn't need to be changed. It just needs to be mowed, and we talked about that. There's one other grassy area further south before you get to the corner on Elm Street where the 2 trees are. And I think that was intended to be grassy, but it's a little questionable, but it looks like it was. Probably best, talking to the landscapers, to leave that grassy. You may have to throw some more grass seed in there because the weeds are growing up in there. There's going to be a bench in there. Part of Safe Routes to School, back when Sean Fitzgerald and even Dee was working on it, there was a commitment to the grant people that the Historical Society would put a bench in there and put a historical marker in there. So I'm not talking about the bench and historical marker, but I can say that the bench has been held up because it wasn't, cleaned up. Now it's cleaned up, the bench is sitting behind the safety complex, and Paul Lucia and I have talked about how we could install that like the bench in front.
This is a
It's a nice
granite
marble
bench.
bench.
This
It's
is a
in front of
granite,
Town Hall.
is it a granite bench?
It's a granite bench.
Okay,
It's a nice bench. But it's been sitting up there since last year. So then, once we get it cleaned up, the landscaper cleans it up, we'll put the bench in there. And then, as far as a historical marker, that's a very historical corner. A lot of things have happened there. The big elm was there. I think we all know the big elm. There was, the trolley went through there, and that's why there was that corner that was so screwy, and they made the road around it. The town pound was there, that, the jail was not exactly there, but right very near there. You've seen the pound in Atkinson, it's very similar to the big rock pound. So it's very historical corner, plus that house there is a historical house, the Younger's house. So all I'm asking for now is if you guys think it's a good idea, if you have another, plan, I'm not sure which way Mark was thinking, but we're offering the funding for one-year commitment, see how it goes, clean it up, make it look good. And some of the landscapers live right in town, so these guys want to do a good job. They're going to go by it, and if they see something wrong, they'll get out and they'll take care of it. So I guess that's the spiel.
Okay, questions? Go ahead, Jay.
So would I know you talked about the grassy area, would the landscapers mow that regularly, or would
Well,
that?
Francine and I talked about it. It's, just thinking to myself, Francine said, well, maybe we could get the town, because when they're doing the park, all they have to do is roll it over there,
Roll
and it'll
across
take
the
them
street.
10 minutes.
Yeah, not even.
On the other hand, the landscaper's right there, he's got so one way or the other, it's not a lot to mow.
Okay.
But, I don't know how you'd want to do it.
It's really the board's purview. We can make a decision or work it out or whatever, but are there any more questions about what he's proposing to do?
You have 3 sponsors plus the landscaper?
Yeah, the 3 sponsors would pony up 3/4 of what the landscaper believes it's worth. I've got 3 bids. I'll have 3 bids tomorrow. I only have 1 now, but I'll have 3 tomorrow. And the fourth quarter, I'm asking the landscaper, you step up and we'll give you a little sign too. So,
They're going to do mulch and flowers?
pardon me?
What are they going to do, mulch and flowers?
Most of it is pretty much already got some pretty good bushes in there, and they will flower, and there's some pretty good flowering bushes in there. We looked at them. We didn't see only a couple of spots where, like by the Younger's driveway, where the plow pushed one out of the way or something. They may have to replace a couple, but I don't think, that's really not what we're trying to do, is they've already got the bushes and trees and everything in there. It's not like put more flowers in, but I suppose
mostly
if you wanted
maintenance,
to
Tim.
put some in, could be worked in with them. I just didn't want to throw too much at them at first, but I'm sure some people could donate flowers and the landscaper could put them in.
Is
But
the
what are
end-
the sponsors
One
actually
at a
doing?
time.
I'm sorry?
The sponsors, what is their money actually going to do?
Their money is going towards the mulch in the spring to clean up the area. And when you come in the spring, there's leaves in there. There's trash. There's a lot of trash. They would take that out of there. They would clean it up, rake it out, pull out any weeds that are there that, from the fall. Then and basically make it look like the way it is in front of the church and in front of the school now. And then as you go through the year, and Francine and I know this very well, and everybody else knows it, those weeds grow. Those are huge weeds. There's still a couple of them. Those things, the roots of them, because I was over there myself, in the heat trying to pull. You did a couple.
I did my penance too, yeah.
So you have to go at it probably at least once a month, from what the landscapers are saying. I'm leaving it up to them. I don't want to have like every week, to be too expensive to have them do that. But the beauty of having a landscaper who lives right on Main Street or something like that, he drives by it, he sees something, he may you just get out and take care of it, something like that. So I don't know. Sorry.
Go ahead, Greg.
So I just making a comment. So it sounds like this is a maintenance, a contract to maintain this.
Yeah.
Not to create it or to.
No,
Stop putting, it already
it's
has
created.
plans there. We want it to look
Yeah.
nice and we want it to be opened up and cleaned. So it's a maintenance type of process.
Beautified, if
Yeah.
you will.
Okay.
Because one of the things we talked about is mulch, and there's some concern about mulch. I'm on the planning board, I know that. The concern on the mulch was initially the mulch that was near buildings, because there were some fires that were right, the mulch was against the building, and the heat got in there and it started fires. And I think you talked to the fire chief, and he said the same thing. That's the main concern. The other thing is there's already mulch in there.
Right.
It's along the side of the roads. I don't think it has that kind of hazard, although the planning board is meeting the third week in June,
17th.
and we could, if we needed to, if the planning board feels that, we need to make an exception for that. That was the only issue.
So does anyone else have any more questions for Jim? Okay, so I just want to let you know that I did a little bit of research myself, and I'm thinking that we probably should create a memorandum of understanding just so everybody's consistent with what their responsibilities are, both the vendors and the town. And we'll run that by Mark and our town council. What size signs were you looking for? I'm thinking maybe a 16 by 24 metal sign. And I did speak with Mark about, taking a couple $100 out of our advertising budget to do that, but what are your thoughts? I want it to be tasteful and
I wasn't really
consistent.
sure on the signs, to tell you the truth. I was going to go around and look at some of the ones that are done for that specific purpose.
All right,
If you use the ones that are used for like political signs, if
Other
you've
won't
sure
last.
for the graduate, I'm
They
not
don't
sure if
last.
those are the right
Oh, they won't
ones.
last, right.
They won't last.
They're a little bit too big, I think. I don't think you want them that big, maybe a little bit smaller than that, but not too much smaller, because then you defeat the purpose. People driving by, they don't
can't
see
see it,
who
right.
sponsored it.
All
So that's a little up in the air of the sign.
Go
I
ahead,
think the
Julian.
biggest thing on the sign, as long as they're low, they can be a little bit wider, but as long as they're low.
Right. No, I believe no higher than 3 feet is the ordinance for
Well, I
zoning.
think if you look at these other islands and other places, if they're no more than a foot up,
Yeah, 12 inches, yeah.
and if they need a little more width, that's not a big deal. It's just
Okay.
it stands out and looks awkward when they're sticking out.
Yeah.
Right, so that should be in the memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
John, did you have a comment? No, okay. So if you could get the information on the signs and maybe, a business card or whatever it is, and
Yep.
and get what you want to do in the dimensions.
Okay.
We can take care of that on our end. The other thing is I do want to run this by the zoning board. I read the ordinance, it's Article 9A-3 regarding signs, and I believe we're within the law to do this, and we're legally covered with the dimensions, et cetera, but I just want to run it by the chair below and make sure we're good to go before we do this. So I have that on my agenda, and I also spoke to Chief Knudsen regarding the mulch, and he personally said that he had no issue with the mulch. However, the planning board did issue an ordinance banning the mulch from prior boards and years. However, the planning board can issue a waiver for us for the mulch. So I think that's what Jim was alluding to when he was talking about our meeting on the 17th. I will bring up a motion to ask for a waiver for the mulch. And then I guess the other thing we need to make sure is that nobody does red mulch here and black mulch there and brown mulch there, but hopefully it'll all look consistent and pretty.
Right. I just talked to the landscaper about that, because they did put mulch in front of the school,
Yeah.
in front of the church, so
Right.
now we're kind of boxed in. We
Into
don't want
that
to have
color, yeah.
gold and green
Yeah,
over here.
it-
So he's aware of that issue.
Okay.
As far as the planning board on that waiver, I would just say that, the mulch was put out there, and I think if you read that ordinance, I think it was relating to new construction or new, wasn't it? I'm not
It
sure
was
if
new
it
construction,
applies in this case.
but
maybe.
I just want to make sure we're crossing Ts and
understand. I
dotting
agree.
Is and doing
Yeah.
everything according to our rules and regulations, because
Well,
that's
we
what
have a
we're here
meeting coming
for.
up, so we could do it then. The only thing is that meeting's the third week in June, and I kind of wanted to get moving and get them out there and doing it. So maybe I can talk to Tim about that, and Tim Moore.
Well, I think the board needs to vote on the waiver, and maybe can he do everything else but the mulch? It's only really 2 weeks
Well, that's the
away.
first thing that has to be done, is actually the.
Well, it needs to be weeded and
He
raked.
could start, there's not a lot to weed, actually. It's more clean up he could clean up the leaves and the trash and stuff like that and get
So
started.
I would prefer to do it formally with the
Sure.
board approval, just so that there's
hear you.
nobody coming back to us saying, wah, wah,
Yeah.
wah. Go ahead, Julian.
I think for the public, because you're starting to talk about the mulch, and most people probably don't realize what the issue on the mulch is. If you have a lot of layers of mulch and it decomposes, you start to get, it generates heat, and you can get spontaneous combustion in dry weather. If you go up north to the paper mills, those big stacks of chips, they're smoking and steaming. There's a reason for that. The other thing is, people, believe it or not, this day and age still flip their lit cigarettes out of cars, and they end up on these islands. And that's what the previous fire chief said. They had fires in the islands because the mulch got on fire. And so that's really what the issue is with the new ordinance, is to prevent fires due to the spontaneous combustion, if you want to call it that, versus somehow it gets lit. And once it gets lit, it stays on like charcoal.
Is it? Okay. So I guess I'm hoping that won't happen, but we can obviously address that, because it looks like it's going to be a dry summer. I mean, we haven't had rain for a little while, so maybe it's appropriate to postpone the mulching until, a few more weeks until we can get some rain. So I'll take care of if the board gives me permission, I would, unless someone else would like to do it, I'll create a memorandum of understanding. Would you like, would you like to do that?
Do we need to get a permit for the sign?
No, we do not. I just want to make sure that the ZBA is okay with it. I think I read the ordinance for it, and I think we're within our legal rights to post that size and dimension in the sign. But I just want to okay it with the ZBA first and make sure we're good. So are you okay with me doing the memorandum of understanding? Would one of you like to take it over? No? No? Okay. Well, then I'll do that, and I'll obviously run that by Mark and by town council before we send it out, and just make sure everybody's on board with it, and I'll run it by you too, Jim, so you can have some input into it as well. So hopefully I'll get that out to you in a week.
Good.
All right, so no other questions? Go ahead,
Well,
Jim.
this is what I call, whoever did that, nice job in front of the church and the.
Oh, yes,
And this Pollard School, because we walked that on a regular basis. It was absolutely beautiful. We saw the new flowers. It was all de-weeded and everything. It was incredible.
I think Pastor Goodrow and
thank
his
whoever did that.
parishioners did that, yeah, so a big thank you to Pastor Goodrow for that, yes, because he did it last year, too, and he did a great job. So, yes, thank
Yeah,
you,
he did.
citizens, yes, we really appreciate you coming together for your community and making it look as pretty as it should
Yeah,
be.
last year, he and I had a conversation, and he took that side of the street, and I took the other side. Maybe we could, I should have taken that side. Sorry. Maybe we could extend that policy to some of the mulched areas in the town green area and stuff, too, because the weeds grow like crazy there, too.
I know. If our grass only grew as good as the weeds, we'd be golden.
We could do an adopt an area.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what we had sort of talked about. And that's a great idea. And we can, and hopefully this is going to be very successful and we can build on that for next year. So let's see how this all works for this year, and then we can either add or subtract or embellish it and do what we need to do for next year.
I haven't seen Miss Sampson around lately. Usually I see her all the time, and I haven't seen her this year.
Well, she's probably laying low with the COVID.
Yeah.
All right, so if no one has any more questions, Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
One other point I want to make is that there is mulch on 125 there, and I know that when people throwing cigarettes out there.
I know.
I don't know what the state does there, so I just throw that out. So,
Yeah, I think our Chief Mullen is working on that with Mark as far as putting something together with that. And Mark, if you want to jump in and make a comment on that, that's fine, if you can hear me.
Okay, can you just say what the subject matter is?
We discussed.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, every other, we discussed the bark mulching on 125, and I know you and Chief Mullen were working on a plan for that, and I don't know if you want to share that with us, or if you're not ready to because you haven't made plans yet?
Sure. What I was about to say is that I've contacted Dean by text, and that I'm at a disadvantage for the meeting because I only really hear every other word. So I don't know what the long-term solution is going to be to other people that are going to be doing the virtual meetings, but it's not good from this perspective. But I understand the question is about the Route 125 islands and about what we're doing out there, or as it relates to bark mulch.
Yes.
So there is no bark mulch out there per se. There may have been some that was put out there with some plantings. There's not a whole lot out there. We're converting some of the plantings that were low growth, kind of viney things that used to catch the trash, and we're replacing it with a conservation grass that can be mowed. So we're trying to manage the growth out there, you know, of weeds and other things, and we're removing things so that we can cut things with lawnmowers. We're obviously leaving the big planted trees and the shrubs, you know, that are sufficient size, but we're not putting mulch out there in any area that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. So if no one else has any more comments or questions, Jim, I want to personally thank you for making the effort to do that and interacting with our business community. You're a good guy.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
I
Jim.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so next on the agenda is solar panels for the salt shed. So I believe I emailed to this board a copy of the RFP, and it's not in your folder because I'm trying to save trees and not copy millions of pieces of paper. This RFP was generated last year, last summer, in the Energy Committee. The Energy Committee has approved the RFP as far as specifications and standards, and this. Okay, all right, maybe that's better. No, that's all right, thank you, thank you. So this past December, I ran it by Mark, and he kind of fine-tuned it a little bit, and we submitted it to Sumner Coleman, and he said, and I quote, "Let her rip." So I guess it's ready to go. So I'd like to have someone put a motion on the floor, unless you have questions on the RFP, to direct the town manager to send out the RFP, because I think the date for bids is July 13th, so it gives everybody a month to get the bids in, and we should have it in fairly early, even though it's probably not going to be put on the shed until late fall, early winter. But I'd like to get this ahead because we have a lot of really big RFPs coming up shortly.
So I'll make a motion to direct the town manager to follow through on the.
On submitting the RFP?
On submitting the RFP for the solar panels.
Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I'm sorry, go ahead,
I'll second
Julian.
it.
Okay. What I'm going to do, too, is I have two local companies that work with solar panels, so I'll get a hold of Beth and make sure those RFPs also go out to those people. The RFP is going to come back to the Energy Committee, and Jay took my place on the Energy Committee, so I am not the alternate anymore. So you two guys are primary and alternate, so I'm going to ask you guys to kind of keep track of that for me and just make sure we get that moving and get it going. But go ahead.
All right, I have a question, the way you said, who's the RFP going to be sent out to? Wouldn't it be in the open area so any contractor can bid on it?
Yes. Oh, I think
I don't want to be selective and
No, you're
limit it
right.
to just a couple people. I
You're
want to
right.
get the best bids.
And I think we're allowed to send it to the NHMA in their classified ad, so it'll always go, all the RFPs go there as well. But sometimes we have to nudge some of the vendors because sometimes we don't get any bids at all. So I think we should do that, and I'm not sure if it goes into the newspaper, probably not. You don't send out RFPs in the newspaper notices, do you?
Not on a regular basis, but it has sometimes.
All right, so we'll see what we get, and if there's no interest, or if we don't get any bids, we'll resubmit it, but you got
I'm
to make
just
an
saying,
excellent
and
point.
it's probably information for the public as well, because I've gone through a bidding process, because I own solar cells.
Yes, I
I was one of
know.
the first ones in town. And I'll tell you what, and other people I've talked to, because they always come ask me questions, because I have the panels out there.
Yep.
And you'll find out that people get bids, sometimes one company actually bids twice as much for almost the same thing that another company does.
I think we saw
You got to
that.
be really careful. Do not go with the first person that bids, because they do vary a lot. It might be changing now with the competition, but before it varied a lot.
And I think we saw that with the salt shed, we got like a $100,000 difference in bids, so go ahead, Greg.
So I have a question. Beth, do all RFPs go out through the website? Are they posted on the website?
Yes.
They are, okay. So that's important for it to get out, and I think this is a matter of just seeding it to some contractors
people, yeah.
that are in the area.
Yeah. And Jay, I guess I have a question for you. Do you think this is something that would be appropriate for the website that you develop for the town as well, or is this not something that you?
Oh, once they put it out on the webpage, I'll share it.
You'll share it, okay, great.
To the
great.
Facebook page.
Go ahead, John.
Are we buying them outright? Are we leasing them?
I believe what we did at the Energy Committee, correct me if I'm wrong, Julian, because you were the main man on this, you're the point man. We discussed It was an approximately $68,000 price tag. We had Resilience Energy come in and give us a presentation, and for that small amount of money, it didn't make sense for us to lease it like the way we did the street lights and that type of thing. So we thought it would be more cost-effective for us to just buy it outright. And that was kind of our dipping the toe in the water for solar energy, because if that is successful and we're able to pay for energy for the public works and the town hall potentially too, then we could, the board can take a look next year at doing solar panels at the safety complex.
So we can keep all the energy we've.
Yes, yes,
elsewhere.
yes, any excess will go to the town hall, and that's what the RFP specified.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what you have to do on any of these projects, it's a matter of what funds do you have available that you can put your hands on versus how much does it cost you to borrow if you borrow versus, yes, you can do rent to own, but you don't benefit that much on rent to own. You do benefit, but not as much. So there's a big differences in payback depending on how you do it, but it also available what do you have to work with.
Yeah,
If
and
you can buy it outright, you always come out ahead.
Yeah, and it wasn't that big of a sum of money, and it was already included in the solar salt shed warrant that was passed in March. So I think we figured about $275,000 for the shed and 68 for that. So I think we're good with the money on that. And you know how good Mark is with getting everything down to the lowest possible denominator, so we may have some funds left over.
Yeah, it'd be a total different perspective if we're talking about millions of dollars to do, let's say, the land dump. That would be a big project. That may
Yeah,
not be money
yes.
you want to get
Yep,
up front.
exactly.
That's a lot of money, so.
Exactly. Okay, so if there's no more further discussion, I had a motion, and Julian, did you second that?
Yes, I did.
All right, so all those in favor, go ahead, I'm sorry, Jay.
I think Mark had his hand up.
Oh, Mark, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I had my hand up because I know someone reviewed it recently, and you mentioned July 13th for the bids to be due, but actually it says July 1st. And I just wanted to be clear on what the date is that you want this to be due by.
Okay, I believe the RFP said June 1st. Does the RFP say June 1st?
The issue date is June 1st, and the proposal deadline is July 1st, but I think you just mentioned July 13th, so I just want to be clear.
That's my fault. I'm already ahead on an RFP for assessing, so that was my mistake. It's due July 1st. That's correct, what you have
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Sorry. I know I'm doing too many things at once here. I know, no laughing at me, guys. People can see you laughing. All right, okay. So all those in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. All right, that motion carries 5-0-0. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the response to the elected auditor's finding. And I wanted to let you know that I chose to respond to the auditors. It was really a twofold purpose, and the primary purpose was for me to reassure some of the newer board members that we have very technically competent people that work in our town hall. They're very good at what they do, and they do an excellent job at it. And most of the encumbrances that are generated are usually generated out of the department heads, and I believe they're reviewed at the end of the year by our finance director, and he will make that decision as to whether they're appropriate or not. And my other reason for this, too, was because I felt that the auditors did not have all of the information that they needed to make a decision and a recommendation. To my knowledge, I don't believe that they questioned any of the criteria that was involved with our finance director. And clearly, they disagreed with my assessment of things. And I guess by proxy, they disagreed with our finance director, who has a CPA, and they also disagreed with the public auditor's statement, which said that our encumbrances were appropriate. So I guess I'm not really sure where to go with this. So if you all have any comments, I'd like to hear them now. Go ahead, Greg.
So the key words that I got from Francine's reply was "and other." And basically what it's saying is giving the flexibility for the municipality to be able to make decisions and to set aside money that's based on the planning of their boards. So that, in Peter and Bob's presentation, was never ever even included. They basically only focused on the first part of that phrase. So that was a really key point. And I think that Francine did a good job in terms of explaining that "and other" means a very, very broad interpretation of how the municipality may manage their encumbrances.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was a good thing. Go ahead, Julian.
Okay, I read that carefully. I read it again. I didn't know they read it again. I made some phone calls, got opinions. And I'm looking at what the intent of an encumbrance is, regardless of the loophole when it says other. Let's just say, I'm on the fence on one of them. I'd probably say, on the other one, I'm kind of thinking, and it actually, what turned me to undo one of them was actually Francine's response. Because the one on the 25,000 for this computer system, it was even
Could you move
said-
that box over closer to Julian?
I think
I couldn't hear.
should have the box,
yeah.
all right, yeah.
And I just want to get clear, it's not a matter of if I'm for or against what the money's spent for, because it is for a good thing. And I understand how planning, but to be proactive and preeminent because you think you might spend something next year is not grounds for encumbrance when we do it in December. And if it's something we really needed, it could have been presented before the budget committee and just put into the budget, which is how I think the process really intends the process to work. Because that was kind of an iffy one. I think it could have been done through the budget process, not added as an encumbrance for the police one.
And I think,
And it's not a matter of that I'm against the project and the spending of the money. I think it's the process of how it should have been done. And I don't think we had enough knowledge at the time because we kind of got it at the last minute. I think it's a matter of maybe next time we go through the process, we get it more ahead of time, let people look at it. Because you got that little loophole in there, true, but I don't think it really applies well to that particular example. It does for the other one, for the planning board, but it doesn't really fit. And it's not a matter of anybody did anything wrong. It's a matter of I think we could have done that part better because it would have been better or more open, let's say, by the intention of the law, that we didn't encumber that and that we did it through adding it to the budget as a planning. We might need to spend this, let's add that to the budget if we need it. Now, yes, it's every piece of money that you said is in the general fund, but you can't spend all the money in the general fund unless it's actually in the budget. But if it's encumbered, it allows you to spend something that isn't in the regular budget. So you're kind of like, it's kind of like you're almost bending a rule a little bit, even though it may, in court of law, could be possibly legal, because I'm not going to play that case.
Right.
But I think that one we could undo. We don't need it because, as you said, we don't even have that number yet now.
yeah, I think there was a comment that was actually made in a response. It said that it was, I know, I'll get to you in a minute, Mark, that the reason that it wasn't put in the budget was because we wanted to lower the budget. And I think there was a comment in one of the responses with regards to that. So
Yes,
I
but I
do
don't
see
think
your point.
that was good reasoning, whoever said that comment, because
I
I
think that
think the
was Mr.
proper
Bracci.
way to do it is be honest, not encumber it. Then if you need to put it into the budget, put it into the budget. It's in the overall, in the pocketbook, it's the same thing, but it's a matter of doing it the more proper way versus what looks like an appearance, a backdoor way.
Okay.
Even though it may not be backdoor, we did it in the open, but it has that appearance.
Okay, good
And I
point.
think we should go that direction.
Good point. Mark, did you have a comment to make? Can you hear me?
Yes, I just have some comments that are not point counterpoint. It's just factual information, and I think it's important. So first of all, the $25,000 represents approximately 25% of the encumbrances, and it is one of the larger ones that was encumbered. But the difficulty with that one is that as we approached the 2020 budget, and there was, the board wanted me to present a budget that was, lean. This was originally scheduled to be another warrant article in 2020 for $25,000, which would have been the third warrant article of 3 for a total of $75,000, because that was the anticipated cost of the the new software for the police reporting. But what happened is, and I may have mentioned this before, I maybe not, but since we're talking about encumbrances, I want everybody to have a full background of the facts. So the Plaistow Police Department is only one of 2 communities in the state that have the current software that we have. We were told a couple of years ago that there wasn't going to be any support for it and that we ought to think about the replacement. So in the meantime, there's been some, at least one big generation of software that has been going on for the last 20 years. And it's getting to the end of that cycle of the current software that most people are using. And along came the notion from the state, who is more or less what the towns deal with software and reporting, is some compatibility with the state. And the state said that they were going to be changing their software and that they were going to move towards e-ticketing. You may have read about that in the newspaper. So that's a part of the software integration between the vehicles and the headquarters, with being able to do the tickets, and it really goes through the computer software at headquarters. So we knew that, and what we didn't want to do is jump on and buy the 20-year-old kind of legacy software out there and then find out that when we make a $75,000 purchase, we just bought the wrong software and everybody else is going to change to something different. So we were waiting for the state, and we were in contact with the state, and we were relying on them to tell us what software they were going to so that we could match up the compatibility. So it's very important that everybody understand why this one happened. It happened for 2 reasons. One, we thought, we knew we had some money in the police budget from 2019 as a surplus. What we were trying to do was reserve that money for the software in case the state gave us some information in the latter part of 19, or if it was going to happen in January, to make the purchase, and we didn't want to make a mistake. And at the same time, we were thinking about the taxpayers and saying, why would we want to have another warrant article in 2020 to have the voters raise and appropriate another $25,000? So I just hope that that provides some information on how we got to this point, because there's one last point. The reason why we're in June and we haven't made a purchase is, unfortunately, the state still hasn't made a decision. We did think they were going to make a decision. We had all indications they were going to make a decision in the latter part of 19. So you can see that there's a lot of factors here. And the reason why there's no contract, which goes to the language that says a contract or a legal obligation or otherwise, is because we cannot enter into a contract with a vendor that we don't know is the vendor that we would enter into a contract with, because we didn't know what software the state was gonna pick, and they still haven't picked. So it's been a difficult road. And I still believe that if the state doesn't pick somebody, we're not going to even spend it, because we don't want to make a mistake. It's not the mistake of $25,000; it's a mistake of $75,000, because there's already the other 2 years of reason $25,000 is sitting in a capital reserve account. So out of an abundance of caution, there's a lot of reasons why this one happened. This is not normal. Usually any encumbrance is that you just can't finish business by December 31st, and you have the money appropriated, and you have a contract that's going to happen, like we did for the town hall sidewalks, or fixing the parts of town hall, or the various other little things that we're doing. This one here was a bigger one, but we never anticipated we would be in June talking about this. So I just wanted to give some information on how we got here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have it.
Yes, I understand all of that. I remember it all, and I know how important it was and what the plan was and why. And and how everything transpired. Nobody did anything wrong. Nobody tried to be sneaky. We were all doing the honest thing at the time. Jay wasn't here yet.
Lucky you, Jay.
And we understood all that, but I didn't at the time. I personally didn't say, because I didn't give it that thought because it was such last minute and didn't really get to look at the big picture, is I would still have wanted to put that money aside, but I would rather have done it either adding it to the budget. You can always add $25,000 to the police budget, so we would have it covered in case we had to do it right away, or the warrant article. And I understand there's always a risk with a warrant article, it might fail, so I probably would have preferred to put it in the budget. I don't know what the opinion of the other selectmen are, just my feeling right now, because it's being important, I'd rather have it there and not have to wait on a vote that might go the way emotions go. So that's the only reason I would unencumber it now. We don't need it right now. And it's just kind of to fix a thing that maybe we may have chosen the wrong direction, even though it was all good intention.
Okay. See, no good deed goes unpunished, right?
Exactly. We all make there's always some multiple ways to do things.
So my comment is, we have our own expertise that we try to use to make decisions for the town. There are things that are financial, that require expertise, requires education, requires certification. We have a certified CPA for our auditor. We also have one for our finance director. And I want to feel like, yes, these two people would have said something had there been an issue. So versus saying, well, it might have looked nicer. No, it looked fine. It was basically approved by our accounting firm, and it was also approved by our finance director. So I want someone to tell me why it was not. It was. Both of these encumbrances were fair based on the RSA and based on the financial background and education of these two individuals. And it seems like we're second-guessing their expertise.
So
Actually, it's not. I would rather have had the choice, and I didn't feel at the time I had the choice, because I was trusting. And I do trust both these individuals. I have a lot of respect for both of them. And now in hindsight, because I didn't know my options at the time, because it was kind of rushed, I think in the future we should look at it a different way and follow things. Well, laws, RSAs are there, and there's always loopholes, and there's interpretations, but we know what the intent of an encumbrance is.
So I guess what I'm hearing you say, Julian, is that you would like to have this information regarding encumbrances a little bit earlier in the year, so that we can review them thoroughly and make sure that we're, it's A, B, C, D.
And if we're going to go there, I'd like to make a motion, a policy in the future, so that we don't end up in that situation again. Because one thing, when you have something and it brings up an issue, maybe there's always the best way is, let's make the process better so it doesn't happen again. That's all.
What was the issue? What really was the issue? Because we had the incumbents approved by our finance director and by our auditing firm. So what really is the issue?
I think the issue is when you make a decision and you don't really have all the facts.
They had all the facts.
Well,
those two people had all the facts. They made a decision based on the facts, based on their education, based on their certification.
Yep.
Two individuals who are not educated the same way or have the same experience basically raised a recommendation that I believe was incorrect.
Well, I think one of them was...
Let me finish. And they never contacted the finance director or looked at the findings of the auditing firm. And to me, that would be the minimum due diligence that you would have to accomplish before you decide to recommend or to state that the town is not following its policies. The town did follow its policies, and it was approved by our finance director and by our auditing firm. Well, so as far as I'm concerned, nothing was wrong.
Okay, do you want to respond?
Well, you're implying that I'm saying somebody was wrong. I'm just saying there were other options. The other thing is, you've been in the military.
Yep.
I trust all the people that were under me. but I trusted and verified always. I wanted to see the information after the fact. Someone turns a valve off or something in a chamber that's in a vacuum, especially you go in the space station, I'm going to trust the person said they turned that thing off. But you know what? I'm going to check it, and that's what they do, because you want to verify it, because it's not a matter of trust or confidence. It's a matter of, I have to make a decision. I'm responsible for it. I know that the two auditors that came here aren't CPAs or whatever, but I think they had a good point. And one of them, I think they made a good point.
Okay, so
It doesn't matter if they're experts.
So to your
Yeah.
point, I spent a great deal of
Yep.
time with both department heads, and I got reams and reams and reams of information because I was actually curious myself. And they provided incredible documentation for me, and again, it's a recommendation and it's an opinion, so each person has that. So, recommendations are technically really just what they are. A recommendation is not binding, but both department heads completely satisfied my curiosity in the fact that they did provide documentation, explanation, and a clear intent to purchase. So as far as I was concerned, I just verified through their documentation. There was voluminous, believe me, I spent hours looking through it. Recently,
But
yes.
you didn't do it at the time we made the decision.
No,
See,
I
that's the
didn't,
point.
because I was very curious. I thought, okay, well, if there's issues with these two encumbrances, I'm going to check it out. And I talked to the department heads, and they were wonderful, and they took time out of their work and explained to me their rationale, and they step-by-step gave me spreadsheets and everything else. So I personally am very satisfied that, yes, I made the right decision. I think the board did as well. And so to your point, yes, maybe we can work on getting some of this information a little bit earlier during the year. I'm not so sure it necessarily needs a motion to change a policy. I think we should maybe take a look at it during the course of the year and see if we do need to adjust it next year. But they satisfied my criteria 100%. So
My final comment is the work that Francine did to collect information, to make sure that she had the documentation and that she was confident that, yes, they did make the right decision, could have been done by the two elected auditors. They could have gone to the department heads. They could have done that research. And that's why I'm saying, Julian, is that my concern is they came to a conclusion, which I consider hasty, because they didn't do enough research and didn't go off and contact the people who made the decision that those were valid encumbrances. They could have talked to Greg Kobe. They could have talked to the auditor. They didn't. They could have gone to the two department heads and collected the information to say, yeah, we did this, and this is our issue with this. Or they may have gone to the department heads and said, oh, well, I guess this is an intent to purchase. And the conclusion that Francine had probably would have been a conclusion that they had. That's my concern, is that we have two individuals who, fine, they have assumed a position, but they have to also take on the due diligence of doing the research and the homework to make sure that their conclusions and their recommendations are correct. The last thing I'll say is, and I mentioned this to Peter, is that it would have been a lot better had his initial issue been communicated to the board before his presentation. So we would have had the opportunity to understand what he was addressing or what he was trying to address, and to make sure that, it couldn't be easily overturned, that it really had some substance to it. And instead of waiting until the presentation and he presents it, and then we do the research and it says, that was a bad recommendation. I wish he had come to us ahead of time and said, this is what I'm thinking. Let's discuss this. And we might have said, well, Peter, did you contact the two department heads? Did you talk to Greg Kobe? Did you do these other things? And we could have had a nice dialogue, and they could raise the issue, but let's have the dialogue and let's go do our homework to make sure that we are coming up with a correct conclusion before we tell the town that they're not doing things right.
Well, it wasn't there.
Excuse me 1 second. I am going to allow you one more comment, and I think we're going to move on to this, so go ahead, Julian. Go
Okay,
ahead.
for one thing, it's not their decision to allow the encumbrance, it was ours. I didn't have all the information either. And I don't know why we're going to personalities, because I know what was going on at that period, the friction that was going on at that period of time. It wasn't easy to go talk to people. There was things going on, let's leave it at that. I'm gonna make a motion, and you can turn it down or vote it down or whatever. I want the town encumbrance policy to be amended with just a simple statement, doesn't add anything extra. It just says the town manager must provide to the Board of Selectmen, because I want it to, and the town selected auditors, a list of proposed encumbrances and their supporting documentation at least 1 week prior to the final Board of Selectmen meeting of that fiscal year. And that way, we get to look at it a little bit ahead of time, and we can decide, and whatever we decide, we decide. And that's my motion, to just change that policy. Just add that little bit to the policy so that it becomes part of our normal process. And I think there shouldn't be any problem with anybody with that.
Julian, can you read that one more time, please?
I'll read it. Amend this, the town manager must provide to the Board of Selectmen and the town elected auditors a list of proposed encumbrances and their supporting documentation at least 1 week prior to the final Board of Selectmen meeting of the fiscal year, which is when we usually do encumbrances. And the usual encumbrances was not part of the change, I just added that. And that way we get to see it a little ahead of time, and we can decide, and they can analyze it, and they can tell us if there's any thoughts, and we can decide on the input, whatever we decide.
I'm concerned that the board would be hogtied into waiting for a recommendation from auditors before they made a decision.
No, because they get it at the same time we do.
Yeah, and they say they want to look at it and they're not sure, and they're going to say yes or no, so.
Well, we don't have to give them extra time. They get to give it to it at the same time we got to decide, and we decide. They don't have an input, they don't have an input.
Right. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All right, so all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed. So the motion carries 3-0.
Like I said, this is not an attack against anybody. Nobody did anything wrong. Everything was done in good intention.
I just want to make
Yep.
sure that we are not being hogtied into being prevented from making a timely decision because we're waiting on, quote, recommendations. So that's all I'm going to say, and we're going to move on because I think we've beaten this to
Well,
death.
so make one statement of that. If we get it a week ahead of time, they get it a week ahead of time. If they don't have an input by the time we have to decide, it's decided.
All right.
We don't have to wait on them.
Okay, so next on the agenda is to discuss the speed limit on Route 121A. It was a citizen's request, and I believe you have a copy of the email that was sent to Beth Hossack regarding a change of speed limit. And I also provided to the board, and I hope that you received this, a magazine article that it was a very similar situation. It was in Plainfield in Lebanon. It was on Route 120, where some citizens petitioned the DOT to have the speed limit changed. And unfortunately, the speed limit got increased and not decreased. So I guess you have to be careful what you wish for. Go ahead, Greg, you were going to say something.
So I have the person that was communicating this inside of the letter basically said he contacted the Plaistow police and got no response at all.
Right.
That was my first concern. My second concern is these are opinions unless we put a radar machine out there and actually determine that people are indeed traveling faster than they should. So I'd like to ask Mark, I actually would like to ask Doug the question, have you responded to this, and have you done anything to determine that there is a speeding issue on that part of the road?
Okay.
I thought Jay had his hand
Did
up.
you,
I have a question, but
I heard Selectman Talon asking two questions. One was, or a comment that I guess the alleged writer of the email has claimed that they contacted the police department and no one answered them or contacted them back. I think what I read in the email is that she said, or he said, I regularly call the police department to request a patrol car to come address the speeding issue, but I have not seen their presence. That's listed in the email on the bottom. So I don't know if that's what Mr. Talon's talking about. The second point is, if they did call to talk about the speed limit on 121, that is regulated by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, because that speed limit is set by the state. So I may have missed another question that Selectman Talon asked. If I did, I'd be glad to answer it if I missed something.
No, you're,
So to my
you hear him,
understanding
Mark?
from what you said, we would not measure speed, or we would not patrol that area, that part of town? We would not patrol that road?
No, that's not what I said. It's the email that said that they have called and they haven't seen a police presence.
Right.
Yes, the police patrol all of the streets in Plaistow, whether they're state or local.
Oh, okay. That's what I
They do
thought.
patrol.
Right. So I don't know, there may have been. I mean, Doug may basically say, yes, I have a log that says that we wouldn't have gone out there and we did that, and here is the results. Yes, there was speeding, or no, there was not speeding. We haven't seen that. So all I know right now from that letter is this person's opinion that there is speeding. There's no formal measurement of what the traffic is doing on that road.
So let me also tell you that I also did more homework again, and I did contact Chief Mullen and asked him about speed limits, and he was very specific with me. He said that when the state starts laying out state roads, they actually limit the amount of driveways because they're trying to look at densities, and they also look at speeding, and they look at a bunch of different criteria when they lay out the roads for speed limits, and it's very specifically and tightly regulated. So there was reasons why in some areas it's 25 miles an hour, some it's 30, some it's 40. And so it is, as Mark said, the DOT's purview to lay out these things with a lot of different information that they use to justify their speed limits. So, I'm thinking that this may backfire on us. So my personal feeling is I would take this under advisement and see what else comes of it down the road a little bit. And it seems like also it's more of a question potentially of enforcement and not speed limit, because you could have 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. If people aren't doing it, then that's enforcement. That's not lowering the speed limit and making it appropriate. Also, I think she made a point of saying that, there's no bicycle riding, no dog walking, no playing. Well, no, there isn't. It's a state road, and there's a very narrow shoulder there that really prevents us from doing that. But there are other places in town where any of those activities can be done safely. So go ahead, Julian, I'm just let you make a comment.
Yes, I understand that last comment. If you live there and you're a kid, you're not going to carry your bike over to the next street, which doesn't have a shoulder. Let's be realistic here. I used to ride a bike a lot when I was a kid, and I had back roads and whatever, and it's something you have to deal with. But anyway, I also walk a lot in this road.
Me too.
Okay, down this street here. And I'll tell you what, now there's more small kids than ever. And I've seen some close calls, and I'll tell you, some of these cars are cruising, and they're burning rubber out here and everything. So it's not, I think, and I've mentioned it a lot, let's put our driver's hats on. And people will tell you this, if there's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, cop's not going to stop me when I go up to 40 maybe. Because I think the police officers also know it's hard to make it stick in court if it's not too fast. So I don't think they got to take their time, especially in this environment, to give a ticket, then it'll get thrown out in court. They can't make it. So I see the practicality of it. So usually when it's 30, people are really, a lot of people pushing 40. And if it's 40, they're pushing 50. And but now if you make it like 25, now the top, at least it's 35. Now you're still going to have those, because I saw some people getting stopped, and they just like the speed. But you know what? If you go through a town where when you go through a town where people are known to get tickets for speeding through town, they all slow down going through that town. And I mentioned this at Board of Selectmen meetings in the past. Enforcement can change people's habits because they don't want their insurance policies to go up.
Correct.
But when they know they can get away with it, they are going to do it because that's human nature. So speed limits, yes, if you make it a little bit lower, you know they're going to go a little faster. And the other point is the enforcement, just like you say. If you have a town that doesn't actually enforce the speed limit, then people will abuse it because that's just human nature, especially a lot of the young, the older people do it too. But I also know that one of our problems is 121 is a cut through to avoid 125 because that speed limit is only 5 miles an hour difference than it is right here in town. So, and they don't have to hit any lights. So this is a big cut through. If you look at the cars, most of the cars coming through here during the day, they don't even live in Plaistow. It's a cut through because it is easier to cut through Plaistow, go faster, not get caught, and don't have to stop at any lights. Because that 5 mile an hour difference doesn't keep them at 125.
Right.
So it's a kind of a combination of raise the speed limit on 125 maybe and cut the one on I don't know what the solution is because I'm not a traffic expert.
Well, exactly.
But it's about people's habits. It's about enforcement. You can have a speed limit 10. It doesn't mean they're going to follow it.
Right.
Exactly. Okay, Jay, you had a comment, and then you go ahead, Greg.
I have a couple things. So I read through this, and is this a petition to the state? Or is this just a letter and someone's working? Because I guess my question is if this is a petition, have others on that stretch of 121A or 121 signed something?
It is my understanding that one of our state reps, Peter Terosian, is working in Concord to try to get the speed limits on 121A changed. So this woman, in my understanding of this, is a singular woman that has not created a petition at this point yet, but would like our Board of Selectmen to support this effort. So I think it's just one woman asking to do that.
All right, I was just curious on that end of it. So I was reading through this and reducing the speed from 30 down to 30 at that area. I think it's kind of low, but this is a state road. I'm assuming that if the state were to look at this, they would come in and do some kind of traffic calming study.
Yes.
So we would have data to look at to say, between 5 and 6 people are doing 15 over the speed limit on average. We need to do something there. But is there something we can do in the meantime? Like we put up some no parking signs up by the town forest. We have a couple of those big signs. Are there things that we can do now that we can put out there to try to slow people down? Like I drive by the high school, Greeno Road, there's a speed limit sign. And, sometimes it yells at me, tells me to slow down. I'm only human. And, are there those type of signs available that we can put out there? Or is that responsibility of the state to put them out there since it is a state road?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think Mark would probably help us out on that. Can you hear us, Mark?
You did not hear any of that.
No?
I was listening, but again, I couldn't hear everything that he was saying. The gist of what I heard is that he was talking about that this might be one person that has a concern about traffic. That's about all I got out of what he said.
Okay, I'm sorry, I should have given that to you.
He's going to restate it.
So I'll abbreviate it. So are there things or tools that we have at our disposal now that we can put out there to try to help calm some of the speeding that occurs there? I know there's short medians. I know we have signs that I've seen in town. I think we have 2 display signs. I don't know if they have radar capabilities on them, but is there an opportunity to put those out there? And signs like we have coming up across the bridge near the Legion and by Greeno Road, there's a couple signs that will yell at you if you're going a little too fast. So is that something, those type of signs, those radar signs, is that something that the state would have to install? Or is that something we can, because it is a state road, Or is it something we can do as a town to deal with?
So the first part of your question is, we have a radar trailer, and we can put that out there. In fact, that trailer is moved around town and is in use continuously now since we refurbished that with new batteries, and we have that out there every time there's a request. So that can be moved around, that can be put out there. Your second question about the signage, all signage on the state road has to be approved by the DOT administrator, which I'll get into later on a different location in town on a state road that I've had communication with them about 2 issues. So it does have to be approved by DOT. So the town cannot just put up any signs unless it's approved by the state.
Okay.
And Mark, that includes the radar signs as well?
It doesn't include the radar trailer. We can put the radar trailer out there because that's a temporary measure to just measure the speed and notify the speed. So that's not a permanent sign. That's a temporary, and that is allowed.
Okay, good.
So I guess my thought and my personal opinion is let's try some of these fixes before we go and jump into the DOT and try and request changes. Thank you, Jay. Did you hear what I said, Mark? My personal opinion is that we need to table this and take it under advisement and utilize what tools we have first before we go and jump in and make requests for speeding limit changes. Let's see what we can do first. Go ahead, Jay.
And I commend this resident for doing this, because many of us have driven that stretch, and, you know, I find myself driving slower now. I kind of am a lead foot. My wife always yells at me, but my dog has a kennel out there, so I was driving out there even today, and I was doing 42, and I had 3 people right up on me. You know, it's fast out there, and you know, it's been that way for years, and I have friends that live out there, and they've had cars come right by their house, you know, so thank God there haven't been too many accidents recently, but, you know.
I have jumped into poison ivy more than once.
Yeah, I'm sure. There you go. Right out there too, so you know.
Go ahead, John.
So we're all in agreement, so are we saying that we're gonna ask Doug to put a sign out there so we can get this going?
Yes, and perhaps we may even be able to ask if he has any extra officers at certain points in time to maybe strategically put a cruiser or wherever that may be. And I think we should try maybe some of that stuff first before we go and talk to the DOT. Because as I said, you might be surprised at what you get when you ask, be careful what you ask for. And they might decide, oh, we need to have it 50 miles an hour up there where I live.
Well, you're up in
know where I
that
live.
neighborhood,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
anytime I drive up there, no offense to the police in town, but you rarely see them up there.
Right.
So everybody just feels they're zipping right through. So once they start seeing some stuff, maybe it'll help.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
so are we done discussing this?
Well, I still have a concern about how long this will take and everything, because I don't want to be looking at a case where some kid or whatever actually gets hurt and we didn't do anything. And things like this, let's put it off, can be, who knows, could be a year from now before we get any results. And I also know that when you get that flashing sign that's down 121, everybody slows down when they see that because they think they're being radared. Right. Then when the sign goes away, they go back to their normal habit again. So yeah, it's a temporary fix when they see it. And then when it goes away, they go back to their old habit. I've literally gone down this. I've seen people take air between their tires and the road going over this railroad track. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I have seen myself in whatever, like, whoa, what just happened here? I almost got run over. Because they just come out, they come so fast, you don't think they're there, and all of a sudden they're there.
Well,
So I think that maybe something a little proactive.
well, I think we are being proactive, but
yeah.
I want to let Greg speak. Go ahead, Greg.
So I just want to say that I agree with what Julian previously said, that this is really an issue of enforcement, and that putting the radar sign is one thing, but secondly, recommending that an actual, I don't want to call it speed trap or whatever, but a police officer being able to actually pull people over when they're speeding will have the desired effect of getting people to say, oh my gosh, I got to slow down.
Yeah.
So I'd like to try that first, and then we could ask, from what they have collected, what is the actual case? Are people going 10 miles, 20 miles over the speed limit, or is it occasional 5 to 7 miles over the speed limit? But at least we'll have done something that
Yes.
we get a presence out there, we have a police officer pulling people over when they're speeding. That's going to change. That's going to lower the speeds, independent of what the speed limit is.
And that can be done
I
immediately?
don't know what the legality is, but I've seen in other towns sometimes, they actually have a sign that says, we enforce our speed limits.
All right, okay, so if you're finished, Mark has a comment, and then Jay, and then I'm going to end the discussion.
So my comment is you've got one person on North Main Street that has contacted a state representative that has given an email to the board asking for endorsement to reduce the speed. And in there, they are actually saying that most of the Plaistow town roads are posted at 25 miles an hour. I'm not aware of that. I don't think that most are. And then when they talk about this area, they're talking about asking the state to reduce down the speed limit to 25 miles an hour from 40. I think that's going to be unrealistic. If you look at all of the speeds, if I rely on their chart here, the lowest is one area or a couple areas that talk about 30 miles an hour. But I don't think it's realistic that Route 121A is going to be reduced down to 25. With respect to Selectman Kieska's comments or anybody else's about seeing speeding cars, let's look at the facts. The Plaistow Police Department Manning may have 2 people on duty to cover the whole town at any one time. It's rare that they would have 3 on. It depends if somebody called in sick or is holiday or they're short-staffed or whatever. Even if you had 3 on and they're responding to calls, it's a misnomer that they could be just sitting out there to check speeders on any given road. They do when they have time. But I have the privilege of seeing the monthly reports, and I've asked for that since I became town manager. And I will tell you that one particular officer has caught people on Main Street, which is 121A, at significant speeds. And I'm talking one of the stops was in excess of 80 miles an hour, and one was in excess of 90 miles an hour. So I just want to bring up to you that they are out there. They are finding those habitual offenders. Some of what the email talks about is motorcycles doing wheelies. In fact, it says young people doing wheelies. You would literally have to have a police officer on every street 24/7 to prevent somebody from taking advantage of the fact that they look up and down the road and don't see anybody and they decide to misbehave or speed. But we would put the trailer out there, the chief would put it out there, and they would obviously be looking at this area for speeders. And it's also, it's my experience that perception, the true speeds are really learned from radar units. And you may see a vehicle go by and think, wow, that vehicle was going fast. But if you're holding a radar gun, you may find out that they're actually not driving as fast as you think. It is perception. And not everybody can tell how fast the vehicle's going unless you run a radar gun all the time. You'd be surprised at some of the vehicles that go by that you think are speeding and they're really not. See, 30 miles an hour is very fast when they're going through a residential street because, if it's a compact area. And if it's a dead-end street, 30 miles an hour might seem like they're going 50, but really they're going 30. And 30 is not unreasonable. So there is a perception factor, but I'm not making excuses for that this road, it may be dangerous. We know that it's sort of narrow, it's sort of not lit, it's sort of windy. We know that a vehicle went off in 2017 from texting and it was a fatal accident. We know about another accident that happened right there by the Y, and the factor is that the man fell asleep at the wheel, and what he did is he bounced off of some trees and landed over at a stone wall. And it wasn't a case of speeding; it was a case of late at night and fell asleep, and it wasn't even a factor of alcohol or drugs. So there will be accidents that happen with inattention and so forth, and it is dangerous. I will tell you that ever since this texting while driving and the cell phones, it always causes me pause for concern about are people really paying attention. Distracted driving is making things worse. So even if you're going 40 miles an hour and you're distracted, cars will cross over the double solid yellow line and start heading towards you because they're distracted. And I'm not making excuses for that. I'm just saying that's what I see out there all the time. So there's a lot happening out there, but just remember that the current staffing only really allows 2 people to cover the whole town, and they can't be everywhere at once. But they will certainly do their best efforts to address any speeders of a habitual nature. If it's a regular thing and they call it in, they will send extra patrols out. And what you don't know is that they've caught people, or the ones that the very people they see doing a wheelie down the street that they catch further down the road, or the speeder that just went by your house that they do catch them down the road. But they are out there, and they are writing tickets for those people that are, speeding through Plaistow.
Okay. Jay, did you have your hand up first?
Yes, so whether we approve this or not, or vote in favor of it, or we don't, is this going to affect the outcome of the state? Because it sounds like they're already working on doing something. Or is this going to help facilitate Peter Terosian and the Department of Transportation to actually look at it and review it?
It's my understanding it's going to facilitate Peter Terosian. So I think my personal opinion is before we make decisions on this, we need to get some factual information, as Mark suggested, about what really is the traffic pattern, what is the speeding pattern, and in the meantime, we can do some short-term fixes that Julian suggested, with the radar traps and potentially more patrols. But go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry, I'll let you go now.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask Mark a question, so maybe I can start off. Mark, does the radar trailer actually record the speeds in a way that it can be assimilated after? Or is it just a real-time display and we don't know how fast people have been going?
Well, the answer is when the trailer was bought, it came with a laptop, and it had the ability to download that. But because of the age of the trailer, I don't know the answer to it, but I did ask the chief when he told me about how it was old and that the hardware or the software or the computer, he wasn't sure if he could download it. I don't have the answer now, but it would always be my intent that they do record that data, because it really doesn't make sense if you're just doing it to let people know to slow down. I mean, that's one reason, but it is good to see what the speed is and what the average speed is, because then you can tell if there's a problem or not. So, yeah, I will find out the answer if he's determined if that is downloadable or not. In fact, maybe since you asked the question, maybe you can even help us find out if it's downloadable. And I don't think, I was a state representative, and I received a lot of complaints from people about intersections, and I went to the highway safety coordinator for the state about a particular intersection as a state representative. And I did get him to come down. And ironically, it was about the amount of accidents because of left turns at this particular intersection, and how many accidents there were and how many injuries. And I wasn't happy with the answer, because the answer is not enough people have been hurt or killed to put a traffic light there. So there is an amount of data that they need in order to change something, and they don't change it just because of one complaint.
Okay.
All right, so we've discussed this for a significant amount of time. I'm going to let Julian make one comment, and then Jay, and then we're done. We're going to move on. Go ahead, Julian.
Okay, everything that Mark said is true, because I've heard that years ago in selecting meetings. I do know that it is downloadable because Chief Jones,
okay.
previous chief, said that they could tell that when they got up to the sign, they were going faster, and then they slowed down. So the only way they had that data is it must have been downloadable.
Okay.
So it probably was, because
All right.
Chief Jones had indicated that they could get the speeds off the sign.
Okay, good point.
So-
Good point. Okay, and Jay, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. Don't we have a highway safety committee in town?
We do, and I
I think it's
believe,
met since last year.
yeah, I believe it's probably inactive at this point.
Okay.
So that's an excellent point, Jay, by the way, is maybe we should put that issue to them. And don't forget, we can always revisit this issue at another
Yeah.
board meeting. We don't have to
Yeah.
make a decision tonight, but, I think that we don't have enough information to make decisions on this, and we have a lot of conflicting
Yeah.
information. So I'm going to recommend that we table it, and we can, do the things that we discussed that we were going to try to do for a short-term fix, and revisit this maybe in a month or two and see if anything has made a positive difference. Are you in agreement with
Yeah,
that?
and I would also want the fact that it's not just one person complaining, because I hear people all the time, they talk to me when I'm walking.
I know.
And the same comments come up. And after this email, I actually, when I was going down the street, I approached everybody down the street, says, what do you think about the traffic situation? Same answer with all of them. It's not just one person's view.
Well, I'll make a
It's
motion that
everybody
we,
that's along the road that goes out and walks.
I'll make a motion that we table this
Yeah.
for 30 days.
Okay. May I have a second on that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So it'll be on the agenda in 30 days?
In 30 days, yeah, we'll revisit it,
We'll
but
get
it
some
has to be
facts.
based on, hopefully we'll get some information by then. All right, great, thank you, gentlemen.
We all said aye?
Pardon? All right, so I'm going to ask Mark if he would be so kind enough to go over his town manager's report.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. So I had some computer trouble at the end of the last week and over the weekend. In fact, Selectman Talon actually was at the highway garage with me and actually witnessed it himself. And I did finish my town manager's report late today, and I sent it to you by email, and it appears it was delayed. And we made hard copies and put it in your folder. So we're going to work on that to see why there's a delay and so forth. So briefly, I'll try to be brief because I know it's probably 5 or 6 pages here. So nothing's really changed with the public safety road and cemetery expansion, other than we're waiting for the RFP to come out, and we understand it's going to come out this week. Westboro Road bridge work on the west side of the bridge, the new bridge, was the redoing of the connection from the old pavement to the new and resetting some new curbing to meet the engineering specifications. That work was completed last week, and that was approved by the engineers. The Pollard Road RFP, you awarded that last meeting, and I'm waiting for the actual contract to be forwarded to me for signing, and we're still working on abutters easements. The Salt Shed RFP, the results, the board also awarded the contract last meeting, and I'm waiting for an actual contract to be forwarded to me with signing. I need to know some dates to put in there for payments and for markers of progress. And I don't want to actually open up the hole for the foundation until I know they're ready to start pouring the foundation. I don't like the concept of having an open hole for any, a big ditch for any length of time. The landfill cap, I've been in touch with one of the project managers, and they're doing their due diligence about the details, and specifically they're chasing down utilities, and I put them in touch with Dan Allington because, long story short, they're doing a historical analysis on the maintenance of the cap, because that's part of the permitting process, is to prove that you've complied with your previous permitting, and we have, because it's about mowing and it's about maintenance. So they're collecting that information because we're asking for more permitting. And that was a requirement from 30 years ago to have a plan for maintenance. And there's a bond that is usually required for landfills and landfill caps. So where we're a municipality, if we can show that we have a maintenance plan, we're trying to get away from having to supply a bond for the new permitting. Water project update. Atkinson is in the process, even tonight while we're speaking, they're having a meeting, and my understanding is that they're going to be signing some documents tonight to actually give the town of Plaistow an easement of that land on East Road in Atkinson. And they'll be signing some wetland permitting applications, and the whole process now is moving forward, and I'm told that there's a higher level of cooperation. There is other things going on, like the construction phase engineering agreement, which is to have our current engineers, Underwood, to continue to be paid by the state through the grant for the water project. There's going to be a document for awarding the water tank construction. Hampstead Area Water Company was a successful bidder. They will subcontract with D&N Tank, who built the Atkinson water tank. So I have to wait for paperwork from them to sign that contract also. The Greenfield Road residents have contacted us about connecting to a future water line, and also the people at 18 Elm Street. So we are in contact with those two parties to you know, just answer their questions and keep them informed. And the town received letters from the New Hampshire DES about findings of no significant impact, which is FONSI, for the P1 water mains and P2 East Road pump house. So that is good, because that's a required document in order to move forward. So we're waiting for paperwork now, and we're already working on some pre-construction issues. If you remember, not too long ago, I had reported to the board that the DES wanted to test all of our town sources of water, you know, our buildings, and also the Hale Spring well that was capped a while ago. And they came back with some results. Some were satisfactory, some were not satisfactory. I just don't have that paperwork in front of me tonight, but the big picture is that whether they're satisfactory or not satisfactory, they're going to be connected to the potable water when potable water comes. They did not have, this particular test did not have MBTE contaminants tested, but the previous test that I had for the Public Works Garage did have MTBE tests, and there is MBTE over at the well in the water at the Highway Garage. And as you know, we've already made provisions to connect to the potable water when that happens. We've already got the pipe run in the building. I already spoke to you about the Atkinson easement, so I won't repeat that. So there's a lot of water department work going on in town. We're starting to exercise the different fire hydrants. You should be exercising each fire hydrant at least annually to make sure that you know that can be turned on and off if they need it. We've had to do some maintenance on the fire suppression diesel pumps and the well pump. We found out that there needs to be some additional work on the actual well piping, and it might turn out to be about $1,500 of additional work. So we're having that done. We still have to maintain our diesel pumps and the fire suppression system pressure until we switch over to the potable water. So we had 5 hydrants out of service. I think we only have 3 now. We're working on getting that down to 0. So the 2 big ones now are across from Market Basket, which was a result of an accident, and there is another one over at Methuen Construction, and we're working on those. And there's a policy that we're going to try to work on, because when you exercise hydrants, if there's a nearby business that has fire suppression and you exercise a hydrant, you may drop the pressure so that the dry system now gets filled with water, and that costs the business some money to have that drained out again. So that did happen to us on Main Street. So we're going to try to come up with a policy with the fire chief, Steve Duffelli, and I, to make sure that we notify businesses so that that doesn't happen.
Mark, before you continue, I think Julian has a question. Can you just hold up? Before you
Sure.
continue? Yeah, come on.
Thank you. Yeah, Mark, did you say that the highway department tested positive for MBTs?
Yes.
Now, my concern is, we have Methuen Construction right next door, and they have a lot of employees. I just thought, are they using that same well water in that area? Because it's right close to that vicinity. Are they aware that, I don't know if they've had their water tested or not, because they do have employees there, a lot of employees. And I don't know if they're using bubblers or they drinking out of the faucet or not. Do you know anything about that? Because they are in our town, and it makes a concern to me. And also, there are houses right on the other side of the track that they have wells too, whether or not that MBT may have leached into their wells too.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions there, but I can answer them all. So the houses on Main Street would have been eligible and been tested in our ongoing program to identify problems if they have MTBE. The exception would be is if somebody decided not to have the state test the wells for free. There are people that have decided to not have their wells tested. At that point, there's nothing we can do. Can't force them to do it. As far as Methuen Construction goes, Methuen Construction's wells have MTBE, and they're aware of it, and they've taken other steps. And the town garage has bottled water there, and we are not drinking it. So I think that answers your three questions.
Okay, I think on this, you answered 2 out of 3. My concern is, I know that people in town figure, oh, I'll get this well, and they always think my well was good. Are they aware that a well near them has been tested positive to encourage them to test, even if they didn't originally want to?
Yes, the letter that was given to each person to notify them that they would have their well tested free for MTBE indicated that there was a presence of MTBE near them, and that's the reason why the state was offering a free test of their well to check for any contamination. But again, some people that got that letter decided not to have their well tested.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead.
So to continue on, the Pollard Park sidewalk replacement project is ongoing. The paving company came out and determined that there needed to be some more grading and filling of some low areas. So there was more material that was brought there, and it will be put in those low areas and compacted. And that's good due diligence by the paving company. You got to understand, paving companies doing sidewalks don't want to get called back because there's a big puddle. So they're being very careful on the grading and the tipping of the, to make sure no standing water is going to stay on the sidewalk. So they're working on that, and that should happen rather soon. Just as an aside to that, there was a conversation, and I think it was the chairman, and asked me about the prospect of holding summer concerts later in the year, as we know, say some of these restrictions would be loosened up, which we don't know if that's going to happen or not. Certainly by finishing this project and having those sidewalks done would be very timely for that if that were to happen. I anticipate that these sidewalks are going to be done rather quickly, and it would they would all be done by the time, if there was a decision to have any summer concerts, later in the year.
Yeah, before we move
the Route
on,
1.
I have a question on the sidewalks, and I think I discussed this with Francine at one point. We've always had a problem at the Pollard sidewalks where the snow blower or equipment would catch those round rocks and the pins would snap and whatever, because you can't keep those rocks contained in the little areas around. And I thought that would be good to have like a bricks or something to contain those round stones so they don't come out into the sidewalk. And also, it doesn't cause an ankle tripping hazard because they're always coming out.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so there's going to be Cape Cod berms put around those rocks and other areas to direct water away from the building. So the Cape Cod berm would stop that from happening.
Thank you very much.
Route 125 island maintenance continues, and they are removing some shrubs. I spoke about that earlier. It's to make that those grass areas, you have probably maybe 50% of the islands are concrete and don't have a lot of vegetation in, and the other 50% do, mostly north of the bridge. And they're replacing some ground cover that just looks horrible, and they're out there doing that. They're out there doing it today, and they'll continue tomorrow. So we're working on a plan, and I think I mentioned at the last meeting, I did receive a compliment from the state DOT that's in charge of the islands in this area. He had come down and he said that the islands look the best that he's ever seen, in his tenure. So we are making a lot of progress out there, and we're trying to make it really look good. And I'm trying to make any complaints go away. So I think we're working very, very hard to make that happen.
Yeah, and I want to compliment you on your decision to start putting grass instead of bushes and litter capturers. Because I thought way back when they were doing this, I thought we wanted to do that in the first place. Because at least a grass you can mow it, and if you get weeds in the grass, they get mowed right along with the grass. But I could commend you on that improvement and the policy of what to go doing forward.
Well, I'm not going to take credit for it because that actually was the chief of police, because he's been the one overseeing the islands out there with the highway foreman, Dana. So, he's looking at the big picture on how to maintain this. It's easy to say you're going to put in this plant and that plant and this ground cover, but when it starts catching all the trash and it looks horrible, some of these plantings are not the best. They weren't the best ideas, but you got to understand that when I came in here, those decisions had already been made by the DOT and been approved. So it was too late for me to get involved and say what I like or don't like. But this is the time, because we are responsible for the maintenance after the first year. And so we are taking care of the maintenance, and we're going to make it so that it looks better, and the grass will look better in some areas. And then the plantings of the trees and the bushes that are there that we're leaving are going to look very nice as they mature. So on to the public safety antenna problems. We continue to get great progress from our consultant and two-way communication, and they're solving problems. They're discovering new ones and solving them at the same time. And we're closing in a radio equipment room at the back of the fire station that was just in an open garage. It had no temperature control. It had a lot of dust and dirt. It had things stacked against it. We put up a wall, and we're going to put a climate control for the radio equipment. If you know anything about radio equipment, they generate heat, and you need to keep it at a constant temperature or a range, because your equipment will burn out when it overheats or gets too cold. So we're taking care of that. Again, the police chief is in charge of that. He's taking care of that. The police evidence room auction is, you can go onto St. Jean's auction site. You can look up Plaistow Police. They have 107 items listed. You can see what the bids are right now. Some of the bids I went on before the meeting, there's between 15 and 16 days before the bid closes. So the items are largely separate. However, there are some smaller items that are put together as a package. They have some coins, for instance. You're not going to put every coin. You're going to take the coins and put them in a lot. Mm-hmm. So you've got a lot of time to look at the prices as it's being bid on. You don't know who's bidding, but it's out there. It's fair. It's open to the public. And from some of the prices that I see there, it looks like there's going to be quite some money turned into the general fund. If I can predict that the prices are going to continue to go up for the next 15 to 16 days. So again, all of that surplus property, we do not have any owners, and that property is at St. Jean's. They will get their commission, but the town general fund will get all of the proceeds. The CARES Act finance grants and reimbursement. Today we submitted the Gopher grant paperwork to be in compliance. It had to be turned in today. As you know, some of you, that we asked you for some signatures on the paper. We turned everything in. We continue to struggle with all of the language to be in compliance. We struggle as in we have FEMA on one side, and we have the CARES grant and the Gopher grant on the other, and then there's some other things like the emergency first responder grant and so forth. We're trying to, and so is in every community, we're all trying to figure out this new system. And our goal is to make sure that any additional costs for the community since COVID-19 happened that is covered through one or the other of the grants. Because at the end of this whole thing, we're hoping that it doesn't impact the town operating budget. So that's what we're doing. We're making additional purchases where we need to, that's related to the current situation with workers and so forth, and equipment.
Okay, I have a question.
Was there a question there?
I have a question. I looked at the letter that comes with the tax bill, and it says that you still get charged, and this comes under this fund, they're still going to get charged an interest fee and a something charge if they use a auto check or if they use a credit card to pay their tax bills online. And I thought there was something in that act when I first read it that some of that could be reimbursable.
Can I
Okay,
just
so
jump in?
I have an answer for you, and it may not be accurate because there's just so many variables here. My understanding is that some of these charges are beyond the control of the town because it's the vendor that's charging some of these charges. There's different charges, and there's town charges, and then there's the vendor charges. And I'm not clear on how we can fix that. But maybe there's a way to fix it and we can go through the vendors. I can tell you that today I signed the paperwork with the Gopher grant that did have an amount in there that was reimbursable under the Gopher for those additional charges. So I'm not sure if we get reimbursed for that, then we just go back and try to reimburse the people for those charges. But I can't answer that right now. I can tell you that Greg and Martha and perhaps, probably Greg and Martha could probably handle that question better than I could. I can just tell you that I've seen the information, but I can't answer any questions specific about it right now.
Could we get an answer for that somehow? I don't know whose responsibility it is, because I thought I said that when that bill first came out. I thought I saw something that interest charges that were incurred because you had to do things online might be reimbursable. So instead of having people get refunded, if we could find out what the answer to that question is, and I know you don't have it right now.
I was also I was of the understanding also that some of the fees were like $1 or $1.50.
Well, now when it's 2.7 or something, 7%.
That's interest.
That's for interest.
Interest. That's a different issue than a fee.
I thought that might be covered when I was reading the thing, because it's unavoidable.
Okay, we'll find out. We can ask Martha about
Because they can't do it in person?
Right. They shouldn't accrue
Okay,
much interest, so. Go ahead.
So the next one is another type grant related to COVID-19, was that we are submitting for the first reimbursement for the hazardous duty stipend for police, fire, and EMTs. We're going to issue 2 payments, and the first one is scheduled to go into the employee's paycheck this Thursday, which would be the first of 2 payments. And I did listen to one of those call-in meetings, and I believe that, well, I heard them say that they consider the health officer a first responder. So we may be amending the grant to include the health officer because of the health officer being a first responder for the COVID-19. Everybody all set with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so town forest parking overview. If you remember, there was Jill Center from the Conservation Commission that contacted me and the board about requesting DOT. The Board of Selectmen made a motion to have us follow up with the temporary signs followed by the permanent signs. Because the temporary would come sooner than the permanent, and we didn't want to delay. The police chief was contacted today because I assigned him that task to follow up, and he was in touch with Bill Lambert from New Hampshire DOT, and Bill Lambert gave the verbal that town of Plaistow can post temporary signs, and they have the authority from DOT to enforce, and the chief asked for that in writing, which Bill Lambert said he would give it. And the chief called the highway supervisor right away today and asked him to post the signs up there. They may in fact be there right now, I'm not sure. But I know the intent is to have those signs posted, if not today, tomorrow. I think he was going to use some of the signs that we use for Old Home Day to put them up there. So we have a rather quick solution, temporary solution, and it is enforceable. And that will be followed up with the permanent solution. And DOT will come down and meet with the highway supervisor and the police chief to locate the permanent signage out there.
Excellent, excellent,
So that was good news.
yeah.
The Route 121A electronic radar signs that I said that I referred to earlier in our conversation about speeding. So down on the south part of Main Street, 121A by East Pine, there is that radar sign that tells you your speed, and it has some other signs above and below. Well, evidently, I know, not evidently, I know that the New Hampshire DOT came riding through and checked out the signage down there and said that the sign was neither authorized or compliant with New Hampshire DOT standards. So I did some research and said, well, who put the sign in and when did they put it in and so forth. What we found is back a couple administrations ago and quite some time ago that the town put it in. We found a letter that a previous police chief, a couple of police chiefs ago, had sent to DOT, but it was never approved by DOT. So what we're asking for is an after the fact, a permit for those two signs. There's one there and one by Jesse George to, like an as-built, and tell us what we need to do to make it in compliance. And my understanding, again, the police chief oversaw that and was working with the highway supervisor to either add signs or take signs down around that sign to make it compliant with New Hampshire DOT standards. And then New Hampshire DOT will inspect it and they'll give us a memorandum of understanding for the maintenance agreement that will be maintained by the town. Well, the truth of the matter is it was installed by the town and it's always been maintained by the town. So it's not really going to be any difference other than it's going to be approved this time. And we'll be responsible for the maintenance, which we already are. So the good thing is those signs do not have to come out of the ground. We might have to alter them to make them to their standards, but I would hate to think that we have to tear those out, and we don't. So we're going to be in compliance with that. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Tax anticipation note, as you know, it's not an easy process, but we had to ask for a legal letter from a town legal counsel who has to verify that the town is not party to certain litigations and the town, is an entity and the town is, not in bankruptcy and, all those things that the banks require for their paperwork file to increase the town's tax anticipation note limit from 2.5 million to 5. All that paperwork's into the bank. We're just waiting for the final. We have preliminary verbal notification that we've been approved, but we're waiting for the final notification in writing that the town's approved. So I think that's the end of my report, other than to say that we had 5 layoffs and I brought 1 person back part-time. We still have different people working from home. We still maintain the same hours as last meeting. We're keeping the town employees healthy and segregated. And unfortunately, the public is still not allowed in town hall. As you know, the numbers in the Merrimack Valley are increasing, and we're trying to maintain a status quo. And we have not had, luckily, we've not had anybody with a reported illness, and we're taking all the precautions, and we still maintain a vigilance by having every employee that comes into work is tested by the fire department every day, and the fire department tests all their people for every shift, every day, and the police department does the same. And there has not been any change to that, and we're doing pretty well. If you think about the amount of time that has passed and the amount of contact that some of our first responders have had, I think we're doing pretty good because we have responded to some COVID-19 incidents. We have had to decontaminate first responders. We have been exposed to people that were asymptomatic that ended up in the hospital. We need to maintain what we have now because it is working. And I just can't tell you how long, because that's a crystal ball, and I don't have that crystal ball. I do not know. I don't think anybody knows. It's going to be, I know the governor is doing reopenings. I know that there's outdoor seating at restaurants and so forth, but that does not mean that the COVID has gone away. It just means that they've allowed some business to open with some restrictions. So I'm really proud to say that I think that Plaistow has done well so far, and I'm hoping we can continue that.
All right. Excellent job. One more, go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I just want a concern that I came up with this week, I guess. And I notice a lot of parks around Massachusetts, even New Hampshire, whatever, and then not to close the entire parks down, because I'm kind of against that, so people can go walking, whatever. But what they've done in a lot of towns is they take the playscapes and those kinds of items and they tape them off so the kids don't crawl all over them, because that's exactly how the kids are going to spread it amongst each other if one of them has it. And they, you know, kids, that you can't tell a kid after he's touched something not to put his hand in his mouth and all that stuff. It ain't going to happen. And I was wondering why I went to Engels Park and that one wasn't. I haven't been to Park because I meant to go there today, but I didn't get around to it. Why haven't we taped off our playscape or sensor so that there wouldn't be, you know, kids climbing all over it, and, you know, the next kid comes along and if they have it, they're going to get it. I'm done.
Is that a question?
That's kind of a question and a concern, why we haven't done that. Maybe we just didn't think about it, and because other towns have done that.
Well, I can tell you, you don't need to ride out to Park, but the Park one is not roped off with any kind of tape. Anecdotally, I've been to Ingalls, and we've been following Ingalls all along. And, you know, there are groups of people that go there, and they're using the wall ball court, and they're using the field. I have not seen anybody on the playscapes over there. My guess is that if we put some tape around the playscapes, that it's probably not going to last that long. That's just my guess, but I could be wrong. I don't think that we can ever prevent people from touching things that they shouldn't touch. But if you think that if the board thinks that taping off those two areas is going to make a difference, we can take it off.
I think it's just a way to tell the parents that you shouldn't have your kids go on it. I mean, like I said, we're not there 24 hours. I don't know who's using it and who's not, but I know a lot of kids used to use it. So,
yeah. You know, and you know, I'm not picking on people from Massachusetts, but I will tell you that I think the last time when I was at Ingalls, there was 11 Massachusetts cars and 3 New Hampshire. So just based on that, I'm figuring out that there are Mass people coming up here.
Yeah.
they do.
One thing you have to be careful of is that if there's been any federal funds used to build any of these facilities, you cannot restrict it from people out of state or out of town. You know, I wasn't going there. I'm just bringing it up to the board. I don't know the history of Ingalls, but you know, it's one of those things that if parks are closed in one community, they find one in another community, and it seems that Plaistow is sort of attractive at the Ingalls right now.
So can we get the tape?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's getting late, so let's put this on an agenda for the next meeting. We can discuss it then.
That's 2 weeks down the road for someone to get contaminated.
Yeah, but obviously, we don't have any contamination within the town at this point. Mark just said we've done a really good job, and we've done it for almost 3 months, so I don't think 2 weeks is going to make a significant difference. So I want to table that until we can discuss that next meeting. So thank you for your report, Mark. So just 2 things really quick on other business. I don't know if the board got these emails. You may have, but we have had 2 resignations from boards and committees. One was Max Dobson, who is the chair of the track committee. So that's kind of in limbo at this point. I've tried to reach the vice chair several times, and he has not responded back. So there's going to be a point in time where we're going to need to make a decision as to whether to continue that committee or not. And then Katie Ingalls gave her resignation from the budget committee. I guess she got another job that's going to prevent her from working and participating in the Budget Committee. So you should know about that. And then next meeting, I invited Cochran in here to give us an update on how the transfer was going with the softwares. And I also am going to be sending out at the end of the week an RFP for our new assessing contract. So I'd like you guys to take a week or so to review it, and if you have any questions, she'll be available to answer that at that time. So that's all under other business. So if you guys have selectmen's reports, go ahead, Mark, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry for interrupting. There was one thing that I didn't write down on my town manager's report, and it was a possibility of using June 29th as a water meeting for the board. My question was, is that going to be an exclusive night for the water meeting as in a workshop, or is that going to be a Board of Selectmen?
I had originally set that up as specifically a water meeting only. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
I can tell you that I talked to Gene Forbes today, late this evening, and that the agenda would consist of, he'll give it to you ahead of time, the agenda would be an overall update, like a status report of the current project in more technical details. And it would also involve the ordinance language that has been reviewed by our legal counsel and all of us, and it would be what we consider to be the final draft for the board's consideration, but not to make a decision, but that if you're okay with it on the 29th, then we would then advertise for a public hearing, and you would have a public hearing and get input, and then after that, you could make a decision one way or the other. So that's really the two big points of the meeting is for that. And the third part of it that we could incorporate in is we have received some letters of interest and qualifications from possible contract operators to operate the system. So we could bring all that information for the board's consideration, which would lead up to the RFP process for selecting your operator. We're not under a time constraint because we do want to bring the notion of bringing the operator on at some point, probably a little bit before we're going online, but maybe not full-time until we need them, but get them in the queue so they'd start getting involved with the construction, the construction projects as they're finishing up, and then be ready for the connection. So is that okay with the board to have those three major points for the meeting on June 29th?
Yeah, consensus, you're all set with that? Yep, and that looks like a phased-in approach, which will be perfect, so that's good. Okay,
So everybody's good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to do selectmen reports right now. So Julian, if you want to grab that little space saucer and start and just hand it over to John, and we'll just flip it around the room.
Nothing except I'm in contact with the sextant again to try
okay.
to go forward after all this chaos that's been going on lately. And it looks like there's a lot of different issues, and we'll try to, I was in contact with with him today, and there's a lot of little issues. Some are financial, some are logistics, some are land, and those are all little things that we're going to have to get together now that things are settled out, and just start working on one at a time.
Okay,
so we do it right.
So when you're ready to make that presentation, just give us a heads up and we'll put you on the agenda.
There's a lot more issues there than we thought when we started.
I'm sure.
And now that we have, let's say, a real sextant that's experienced and knows what he's doing, we can try to fix or resolve or make better the things that we have.
Excellent. I know you're doing a lot of work with that, so thank you.
Well, not a lot of work, because there's been a big delay since all this COVID stuff started.
Yeah, okay. All right, John?
Nothing here.
All right. Well, I attended a rec commission and Cub Scout meeting this Thursday with Jay, but I'm going to turn over that information to Jay so he can talk to you a little bit more about that, and otherwise I have nothing either.
And I'll make it just as quick.
I won't. First off, I wanted to thank Maxine Dobson for her time on the track committee, and also Katie Ingalls on her time for the budget committee. So thank you for your service on those committees. I also want to congratulate the 2020 Timberlane Regional High School class for their graduation this year. You know, it wasn't a typical year, so go out and do good things in the world, and, you know, congratulations. So, Francina called the meeting with the Rec Commission and the Cub Scouts about the shed. So we discussed, and the Cub Scouts had a couple different ideas on potential spots, and they're going to work those ideas, one being the library, so they're going to approach the trustees, the other being the highway garage potentially, and we're going to reach out to Mark, but work with the library first to see if there's a potential there. And then the rec, Ingalls and Park were kind of third and fourth down on the list. So those weren't, as Mr. Lee said, they didn't really check off the boxes on what they're looking for security and location, stuff like that. So it was a good meeting. We all took a walk out, socially distanced, out to the highway garage so they could see it. And I think it was a good, productive meeting. And
Yeah.
we all, you know, and
Yeah.
I think the Cub Scouts they're kind of driving it right now. So I think if I've left anything out,
No, and
Francine?
thank you so much for being willing to participate in the meeting, because you were a huge help, and that's what your heart got broken over, John, and I'm sorry. I know.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
have a question
Good.
for
Go
Jay,
ahead.
if
Go
you
ahead.
know, because you're on the rec committee, because I know there's some concern about the summer programs. What's happening with that right now?
At the last meeting, the last rec commission meeting, it was discussed they were still planning to go forward, to be prepared. There are some guidelines that have come down recently that also the health officer had given to them to review. So I think that decision is still being made. I gotta assume that at some point, a decision needs to be made, because they need to either plan to get, they have done interviews for counselors, but a lot of the guidelines are a little complicated and will make it a little more difficult for them. So they're reviewing all that, and they're coming up with a decision. And I know right now at this point, the stay-at-home order has been pushed out 2 more weeks, so I can reach out to the chair and see where they're going with that, but a lot of other towns have canceled their summer programs for the summer. All the surrounding towns from Plaistow have, so.
Yeah, 'cause I read some of the guidelines of what we got in our emails, and one of the things, it seems it was more protecting the employees of the rec than it was to protect the kids. Like, the employees got the mask, but what about the kids? So
They
it
all-
seemed kind of very, like you said, very
It was-
complex.
The recommendations or guidelines were they all wear
Okay,
masks.
I didn't see that part.
So it's a little complicated, so they're working through that now. So I'll reach out and see if they've gonna come up with a recommendation, so.
Thank you.
Okay. So, gentlemen, if you have no other business tonight or anything else to discuss, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at,
When's the next meeting?
whoa, okay, go ahead.
I was just reading in the FYI folder.
Yeah.
I know how much everyone loves Comcast, but
Yes.
just want to let you know, as of June 30th, 2020, the following packages won't be available to new subscribers. So if you're going to change your service, you won't be able to get these packages. Super Triple Play, Signature Triple Play, Select Triple Play, Standard Triple Play, Super Double Play,
I don't
Signature
even know
Double
what that
Play,
is.
Select Double Play, Standard Double Play. So
You don't like 2s and 3s?
I just want to let everyone know
All right,
that was in there. I know everyone loves Comcast, so
all righty.
thank you.
Okay, any other business to conduct or anything to discuss, gentlemen? No, all right, so I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:45 PM. Thank you, good night, and good night, Mark.
Thank you.